So here's where we are today with property and rent on this planet. At the moment, everything on the planet is owned by somebody, and all the resources on the planet are owned by somebody, or some company or a government. So if you're born today, or even 20 years ago, this means that simply for existing on the planet, you are going to owe somebody money for doing that. And yet people still continue to have children thinking that there's going to be this time when they'll be able to buy their freedom from that in some way. You know, if they get an education, they'll be able to buy their own home. But even if you own your own home, you have to pay taxes on it. And no matter what that house needs, it's going to require resources to fix it. So all the things that can break in a house need to be replaced from time to time. And no matter what that is, you're going to need to go to a store and buy those things. Now some people think, well, I'm just going to go out into the middle of the forest and I'll pitch a tent or I'll build some structure and I'll live out there. No, those forests are owned either by logging companies that make timber and wood and things like that, or by governments, and they have restrictions on what you can take out of those forests without paying for them. And this is true all around the world today. Everything has been purchased. A long time ago, there was the idea of frontier, where there were virgin lands where you could just go and set up a homestead and what you found was yours and what you hunted for was yours. That barely exists today, if at all. The land is owned, the resources are owned, the resources are owned, and all the wildlife have restrictions on what you can take. So you can't just freely, without cause, live your life. You owe rent simply for existing on this planet. We all do. You owe rent to somebody. Now, conversely, the people who own this land are in a real predicament right now because of the crunch, the big crunch. When you have this many people, they need more and more resources, and since you own those resources and you own the land and you own the properties on those lands, you need people to continually bring in money for you and their energy and things like that. However, as the resources get less and less, your property becomes more and more prone to a state of decline. Let's put it that way. Because you too need resources, and then you, even if you own your own property, even if you own a major company where you own resources, in order to maneuver through society, you have to pay other people to exist. You too owe rent simply to maintain your property. So you have this divide right now in society. You have people who own the resources and own the property, and you have people who don't, who own rent. But both sides, again, both are in the same predicament. And it just, we've really reached this point of reckoning when everything is owned and resources have all been exploited, and there are title and deeds to everything, and in order to maneuver you owe somebody something, and if you don't, it's illegal and they'll put you in jail, or they'll just toss you out to die, And yet people continue to have children in this situation, thinking that somehow this isn't the truth, that there's still some frontier out there that can be exploited, that your child will be the one to get the good education and find that virgin frontier to exploit. I was in an office the other day, and I was watching this, I think it was MSNBC or something like that. I never watch these things, but it was right there in front of me. And they had the stock market, and the numbers kept jumping back and forth. and there was some guy in a suit talking about business. And I was looking at it and I was thinking basically what they're talking about is how much they have been able to extract out of what's left on this planet. And it is like a continual exploitation to the bitter end. And if you read the business news, if you read about insurance companies who are backing away from these exploitations because of the litigation and the responsibility for the destruction they're causing, you quickly see that we are we're just running out of resources, and it doesn't matter if you own them or you don't own them. At some point, the markets depend on commodities, and commodities are real products. And I think that's where people get confused. They get lost in these abstractions that if they invest their time and their energy, then in fact it must provide back some benefit. But without commodities, it's not real. Do you understand what I mean? It's like if you give me money and I say to you, I will give you something in return, but it's just an abstraction. It's just these numbers on a screen, or I'm going to give you an education that in the future will help you to invest your money better, or something like that, just an abstraction. That's different than if I give you a basket full of apples. A basket full of apples is a commodity. It's real. It exists in real time. It's something that you can use to survive right now. And those commodities right now, all around the planet, first of all, have been bought by somebody else. So in order to get to them, you're going to have to pay. And secondly, they're running out. And as the climate changes, it is causing chaos in all of these commodity markets, because in order to grow apples, you need water, you need land, you need fertilizers, and all that sort of thing, and then you need trucks to transport them, that sort of thing. Yet people are obsessed with the abstraction and forget about the reality of commodities. And then they just go and have more children, which is making the entire thing much, much worse. And further, these children, the moment they're born, owe money to somebody. They are indentured for the rest of their lives. And as commodities run out, the decision of whether your child or the other 8 billion people on the planet get some commodity is becoming dire. So it's something to think about. You know, wear a condom or raise a child in a situation where they're probably going to become climate refugees and face famine. And yes, I know, here's another abstraction. Technology is going to find the answer. And that's fine. Sometimes it does. There are ways of growing lots of apples better and more abundantly. But we've done that. And what do people do with that abstraction of technology? Well, they grow more apples, they go home and they're well fed, and they have more children, which causes the whole cycle to start all over again. So then now you have to run to the scientists and say, well, we need more technology, right? And then, of course, there's people who say, well, God will protect us. God will protect my children. God always provides. God never gives us more than we can handle. And at the moment, there are 20 million refugees running because their crops have failed due to extreme drought. There's wars all over the place. So, you know, it's not a very good argument. So it's like the God of technology or the God of religion, but both are used as a rationalization to just keep having more children, and investments and education and technology and religion are going to save us. No, you must have real commodities in order to survive. I mean, it seems absurd to just say the obvious, but in fact, that's the planet we live on. And indeed, it is a planet. It has finite resources, and you cannot do one thing. If you do something over here in the ecology, like if you grow better apples, but it destroys a certain type of insect, and that insect was required in order to keep this bird alive, and that bird was needed in order to keep these fish alive. You cannot do one thing. And that's another thing people forget. Oh, we'll just have more children, so what if those insects all die? That's not how it works. So we need a global mentality, a planetary overview of where we are as human beings, and then we need to get a grip about all these children being born, because they must have real commodities to survive, not abstractions. You cannot eat an abstraction. Abstractions are wonderful. Intellectual abstractions are terrific. Technology is fantastic. But you have to come down, Mary. You have to come down, Mary. You have to get a grip, girlfriend.